Everyone, this is update for March 22, 2023, day 392 of the war, end of the date update. It's also catch-up update for all previous days, I think 18, 19, 2021. So sorry for such a delay and gap in the updates. I'll try to do it more timely going forward. So let's just, as always, I'm going to talk about strategic news and strategic updates, and then we're going to switch to the front line in Ukraine. So first one is US Federal Reserve increased the interest rate. This is old here, but to 475, between 475 to 5%, which is increased by 0.25%. Why this matter? For those who viewed previous video, I tried to explain that the biggest reason for all of this upcoming bank failures is increase in interest rates. And the way it works with the bank assets, which they become worth less. And so as a result, it basically renders majority of the banks bankrupt over the time. So first, we've seen the sort of weakest links falling, which is, SVB, Signature, all of that, and it looks like First Republic Bank is coming next. Then internationally, we saw that Credit Suisse was acquired by UBS. This actually, and in terms of timing, by the way, how this crisis is gonna fold out. That acquisition really rhymes with how would happen in March of 2008 when Bear Stearns was failing and it was acquired for nothing by JP Morgan. So I'm not saying that it's going to be exactly in 6 months because, as I said, doesn't repeat, it rhymes. So but we basically are repeating more or less the same path, except in 2006, 7, 8, it was subprime that sort of created this hole in the banking system. And this time it just fast increase in interest rates, and the bank are not able to absorb that, or in general, the whole system is not designed to work that way. The reason it's not is because banks, what they do, they get money at low interest rates and short term from the depositors, whoever deposits, and they lend for the long term, right, at much higher rate, and so they pocket the difference. That's their profit. They're basically intermediary, right? So that's just how that works. Right now, we have inverted yield curve, which means the short-term interest rates are higher than the long-term. So this, as you can imagine, because they borrow short-term and it's higher than the long-term, so they effectively rendered bankrupt by that. So that's and we are sort of in the first, iteration of this whole crisis. So it looks like that's where we're gonna go. And I mentioned also in that prior video that if Federal Reserve pauses, then the crisis will be slowly spreading. If they drop interest rates, they may be able to actually maybe potentially arrest the crisis, and if they increase rates, they accelerating the speed of the crisis. So this is just kind of like a high level guideline, and in terms of what's happening, they're in the corner, and then by they I mean central banks, and specifically U.S. Central Bank, Federal Reserve, is because there are two choices: either save banking system or save currency, US dollar. And so far, it looks like the choice is to save currency. And by saving currency, I mean that take control of inflation. And potentially, that might be the right choice. The currency is more important in the end, probably, than the banking system. But we'll see what happens in the future. Also, there's no new updates on these numbers, how much is borrowed under this uh, the whole this discount window system. Basically, more about the bank term funding program, and then just generally discount windows. So they will come out tomorrow. So hopefully I'll update you tomorrow. But I want to tell you one key indicator that the stress is continuing to build up in the system. As you can see, the interest rate was 4.69. Now it's 4.88. So this is clear sign that the stress for the banks is continuing and mounting pretty fast. So this is on the whole world, sort of Western world financial situation, and this is really reflective. Is actually it's not really financial situation. It's just economic. It's life in its entirety, because this interest rates are the tool that affects literally everything the way we live. Even though most people don't sort of realize it, but it creates incentive for everyone, and then incentives drive the behavior, and interest rate is a single most important driver of the incentives in general. So let's just move now to more sort of other topics, and obviously China is prominent. So you've seen on the media that Chinese president came, created a lot of irritation in the West. West tried to stop it with all of this Putin arrest warrants and all of that stuff. But at this point, Chinese are not stupid. They realize, as they say, that we are next. From their perspective, the way I see it, we're next after Russia. So they have nothing to lose, sort of to say, at this point. And the meeting was essentially the importance of all of this is that Chinese president secured supply of the two most critical components for China. For, let's say, if China wants to go into the war, first is food, because China is not self-sufficient in food, and second, energy, and China is not self-sufficient in energy, right? So those are two most critical components for China, and the importance of it is that there's direct link between Russia and China. So you can use land, you don't need to use sea. So their ability to disrupt the steady supply of food and energy is extremely low in case of the war. So this is just we're talking about the war. So this guarantees for China that's basically China has a lot of people that have factories, right? What do you need to run the factories? You need energy and also other mineral resources, which is also was part of the deal, right? So. And you need food for your workers, and so you can then you can go in the battle after that. You have everything you need. China has manufacturing capacity. They have some scientific capacity, which was essentially created and trained by the West in the Western universities, and a lot of I mentioned this before. Many in sort of Chinese science circles, they are trained, they go to the West, they learn, they take the best, and they return to work for China for what they believe is right from their perspective. So those were like key most important things for China. So now it's in a way that China kind of has its back covered, and not even covered, it has ally, because in the past sort of Soviet Union, or let's say Russian Empire and China, they didn't have good relationship. There was a lot of problems all the time, even though both regimes were communist, even though both communist regimes were at odds at times. Sometimes, initially Soviet Union essentially created a communist party in China. But eventually, that Communist Party kind of, how to say, became independent. Let's put this way. Probably the best way to explain it. So going back to all of this situation, and also not only that they discussed all of this energy, food, logistics, and they're executing. There's construction going on of the roads between the two countries, active, and it's going to be fast because it's not Russia, it's China, and they build pretty quick. Maybe quality is not there, but still, they build. It's going to get done very, very quickly. And the roads also, railroads. I mentioned before there are only two railroad lines that connect us effectively in sort of convenient way, China and Russia. And the throughput is very low because one was built like during Russian Empire before World War One, so it was the throughput was obviously not adequate, and then the other one was built like in the 70s by the Soviet Union, and again, both as I said, not throughput is not enough relative to what is needed, how much needed to be supplied to China. But there were also discussion about the military cooperation. There's no news. We will find out that once things will deteriorate, let's put this way, what it was. But the most important is not even that, but how both leaders, they have very strong personal sort of relation and bond, and also the way they were doing conversation kind of clearly indicates that they have much bigger plan how to change the world for their own benefit. And even though China is saying, this is for the goodness of the mankind and all that, this is similar to what Soviet Union was saying when it was basically preparing to conquer the world. It's for the goodness of mankind and all of that, and we're just bringing peace while attacking everybody. So this is the same. There's this same imperial aspirations in China, and Russia is basically sort of younger partner in this relationship. But the most important is that both leaders agreed. For much, what we see is just basically tip of the iceberg. There's much bigger plan of how things will fold out and what both countries are gonna do. And obviously, that's not just those two countries, but we also there's Iran, there is North Korea, there is Belarus. There are other countries that sort of like more like a silent partners in this. Now it's looks like. Even like Saudi Arabia, basically Persian Gulf is drifting in the direction of China. Maybe not so much Russia, but definitely China. So you can see that this influence is spreading even in countries like Indonesia. There is open discussion about breaking away from the Western payment system, which means a Visa and MasterCard, and creating their own. So you can see around the world that there is more and more desire to break the existing system. That's what I would say is the key trend that's very clear. And so going back to all of this, to this China-Russia, there's some plan that we will see that in the near future this year, that it will be unfolding in front of us and probably will affect many of us, let's put it this way. And about the strengths of the relationship, I just want to translate this. How Russian president said to the Chinese president is like he's saying, "Stay," like when they were partying, he said like "Stay safe, my friend," and they both expressed that you're gonna be reelected and you're gonna be reelected and all of that. So you can see this is not a short-term plan either. This is not just like okay, there's gonna be takeover of Taiwan. No, it's much bigger plan how to essentially remove the West from its power and attempt to basically replace the West. That's probably the essence of the plan in a nutshell. And obviously, this is I would say to extent speculation, sure, but it's I would say extremely high probability speculation. Let's put this way as well. Then, speaking of Taiwan, since we're in this topic, so situation there is actually changed. There are new polls coming that show that Progressive Party, which is wants to remain wants to keep Taiwan independent from China. Now they getting 36% of the votes, and Kuomintang, which wants to become part of China, they have 24.8, let's say 25%. So now the leadership switched, and this probably puts China in the high gear for preparation for potential invasion. It's probably still going to take some time. If we really think about this, China really wants to establish better logistical links with Russia, because the throughput of the roads, railroads, and everything there is just not enough at this moment. But they're building pretty fast, so this would be another important consideration at this moment for China before they actually do something with respect to Taiwan. So that's essentially all. And then speaking about the central banks and Swiss central bank, I mentioned about the horrific losses that organization bringing to Switzerland. So they posted their financial results, and they lost in 2022 141 billion US dollars. Just as a reminder, Swiss GDP is about 800, and this basically does not include what's going to happen here with Credit Suisse and so on. So this is a state-run hedge fund that never works. Just a perfect black hole for the money. Okay, now let's switch to Ukraine. Let's discuss what's going on there. So the power grid is okay, functioning more or less. Russia is not focusing its attacks anymore on power grid. Occasionally, accidentally, there are some attempts, but they definitely not reaching the target or not creating significant problems. Now let's walk through the front line in a clockwise fashion, starting from the north and then moving along the front line towards south and then a little bit towards west. So the situation along the state border is intense. There is exchange of artillery fire, but nothing really major. Ukraine also tries to attack Crimea, which is here, using UAVs. Again, all of these attacks are noise in essence, and really destruction of the resources. They don't really achieve anything. And as I said, the most important part is that they waste of resources, which Ukraine does not have enough for this war. And so in this way, it is essentially crime. Now let's move to the North Lugansk front line. Things here are more or less, I would say, quiet. It's definitely quieter. Just a Russian attack here in the middle, but definitely the way sort of this front line behaves right now, it does feel that this is not going to be the main theater of action in the highly expected upcoming offensives by both parties. So we may see some meeting engagement, but it doesn't look like this is going to be the area where it's going to be. Now let's jump to the North Donbass front line. So things here in a summary have not changed. Wagner mercenaries, as I said before, they out of resources, and they don't have even though it's so close, they essentially, let's say, did it. As you can see, this is from March 15. Nothing really has changed. Nothing has changed. They extremely close to everything, but yet it's like what was that, bridge too far, probably something like that. It's uh, close but not achievable. And what they expect right now, they expect some local counterattack by Ukrainian forces, or at least they are very concerned, very scared of this Russian side. On the flanks, specifically Wagner, head of Wagner Group, was literally, broadcasting on the media saying like "save us" to the Russian Ministry of Defense, saying, "Please save us, protect our flanks because this attack is imminent, and if it happens, obviously they're going to be encircled." And which is another interesting point. The head of the Wagner Group promised that he's going to stay with encircled troops inside of this pocket. So we'll see if that if this even attack happens by Ukrainian side, and if it's successful, and then if he stays in that encirclement. So there's a lot of ifs, but it would be interesting to watch, let's put this way. But going back, as I said, they cut off from the supply of the recruits from the prisons, and they don't have enough shells, and this really destroyed their, call it, business model. And so they at this point things have stabilized. Let's here in this, and this is just kind of quick walkthrough how it all was changing. As you can see, it's really the biggest change was really in I would say middle of February, end of February. That's really where it all started, and then they just ran out of the steam, let's put this way. So now let's move south to central Donbass front line, where things actually deteriorating for Ukraine here now. And usually I'd say that regular Russian army is not capable of much, but however here they were able to make breakthrough around Avdiyivka. So you see there's this salient that's starting to build up around Avdiyivka, and let's just look at the closer sort of picture of it. So this so-called southern flank has been, the Russian side has been building since probably like August of 2022. Slowly they captured this village Piski sometime in August 2022. Then they were pushing here towards west. Then they switched towards north. So this was a lot of pain, a lot of time here. The situation really deteriorated here in this northern side of it, where Russian troops started attack on the 18th. They crossed this road, as you can see. They managed to penetrate Ukrainian defenses, cross the road, advanced on the 19th towards Krasnogorivka, this village here, as you can see. Then they passed it, got towards this village to this railroad here, and then they engaged in the fighting in this village Stepove, which they to large extent now control. So you see the developments here were extremely quick, literally like 3 or 4 days, and then you almost have very close to the pocket. I think there's like probably like I would say 8 kilometers between the north and the south. And as you can see, especially if you are on this most eastern part, which actually very interestingly hasn't moved since February 24, 2022, this section of the front line. Anyways, the situation here is definitely very difficult for Ukrainian side, and we'll see how it develops. Extremely unclear why and how they managed to break through here, but it is what it is. I will continue providing updates on how things are developing here. So now let's move to Zaporizhya front line, because it looks like Ukrainian command is seeking solution here. As you can see near Orikhiv, there is village south of Orikhiv that was liberated by Ukrainian forces. I think on believe 21st, and so there are sort of like small advances here and there by Ukrainian side, attempts to sort of push to liberate more land. And it looks like if we go back, this is this area. So this might be, everything indicates that there is desire to do this major offensive, basically run to the Azov Sea and essentially cut off this whole section of all of the Russian troops here in this area from the sort of mainland. Let's put this way. Whether it's going to be successful or not will remains to be seen. At this point, Russian Air Force is not as dangerous, so the attack here has some higher chances of success than, let's say, in the summer. And Ukraine has anti-air defense systems, many more. And I'm referring to the Western ones as well that were supplied. So there's higher saturation of the troops with anti-air defense systems, which obviously helps. And then Russian Air Force is also exhausted and not willing to take extremely high risks. They may just throw, like, let's say if offensive starts and there is really bad development happens for the Russian side, they will throw basically to burn Air Force just to stop the advance. That's an option, obviously. But that will be sort of they will basically exchange Air Force for stopping that advance. So we'll see what happens. Nobody knows at this point, but this is where that offensive may happen. It looks like from this initial sort of moves by Ukrainian side, and then there is obviously conversation about Russian offensive. We'll see where that happens. As I said, that may actually happen here. This could be second sort of attack at Kharkiv here in this corner, or they may have a meeting engagement here in the Zaporizhia region. We'll see what call it like let's say cloud of war, and so we'll find out when this happens. Apparently, both sides are gearing up. Ukraine is getting actively all of these Leopard tanks, Challenger 2 tanks. There's a lot of this. I just want to touch on this depleted uranium that's being used for the core of the shell for Challenger 2. And essentially, think about this: that the density of uranium is extremely high, and that's what you really that drives penetration, and so that's why it's being used. And depleted uranium is still radioactive. Obviously, it's not as radioactive as sort of, let's say, normal uranium, but it's definitely, there's nobody saying that this is 100% safe or anything like that. It's just in a way to extend the weapon of desperation, in terms of like that you're using it because it's it's about your life. And by the way, I think the armor in Challenger tanks, which is sort of combined, meaning that there are layers. It's not homogeneous like steel, and none of the modern tanks has homogeneous steel. Just for those who don't know, because it will be extremely heavy otherwise. But the armor in Challenger that has also layer of depleted uranium, because again, because of high density, it allows to absorb the hit from outside as well. Um, so that's just I guess there is, because it sounds uranium, it sounds sort of scary. I mean, yes, it's not great, but it's just extremely minimal amount, and so on. So just and then also when I mentioned something, there are interesting observations about the Russian side. Even though the tank producing facilities are working there day and night, but Russia is definitely experiencing Russian army severe shortages of uh, tanks. But it actually, if you really think about the way tanks are being used, is essentially assault guns, like World War II assault guns. That's what they really are. Their role essentially in this war. And Russia actually started sending T-54 tanks to the front line. And just for those who don't sort of know much, T-54, it's essentially tank from 1946. It's basically replacements for T-34-85. So I'm just wondering when we're gonna see T-34-85 on the front line as well. But basically, these tanks are going to be used as assault guns. They obviously not adequate for right now, but everybody, when you're desperate, you throw everything into the mix, into the battle. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until next time. Bye bye.